but toxic situation that was just difficult, and right, and all you can think about is, man, I want a new job, or right, like it's just hard to focus, and so productivity just goes down the drain. And if you take that away, if you reverse that, if you make that into a psychologically safe situation where you feel like you belong, where you feel like you can, have a voice, have ideas, matter, that can really help you feel connected to other people, and also help productivity just really skyrocket.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Andy Proctor. Andy is a social/health psychology PhD student studying how friendship and social connection impact health outcomes. He is a certified positive psychology practitioner and delivers workshops and presentations on how to strengthen positive connections and encourage friendships in the workplace. His podcast, More Happy Life, has been featured in the New York Times, ABC News, and Fox News. He is a regular contributor to Psychology Today and co-chair of the Utah Positive Psychology Association. He is on the TEDx BYU board and the research team for Eventbrite's Social Connection Project. His work on teen well-being has been featured in USA Today, Teen Vogue, and The Hill. Congrats on More Happy Life, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me here, Karl.
I'm really excited to have you on the show to talk about the work you're doing and the importance of connection and building a good life that has balance and fulfillment, because there's so many people that that I know are feeling this gap. There's a hole where they may even be successful professionally and have, like, on paper, look like they should have a great life, but they're missing something internally that is leading them to not be happy or feel like there's something missing. And so why is that connection one of our most underrated assets?
Well, it's such a good question. Yeah, I think it is underrated, and I think there's a lot to be said about connection, and I think that it's common to underrate it. I actually just published a couple of studies this last year on the fact that people, when they look at social connection, getting together, or like, keeping friendships alive, or just those types of experiences that help us feel like we're not alone or that we belong, right? The general population underestimates the impact of these on our health specifically, which is what I study, is like, how does social connection impact our health? I think more people do see it as important for mental health, but not necessarily for physical health. And but yeah, I think it is underestimated, and it's kind of like, I see it almost like back in in the 50s, probably even early 60s, they smoking was it was kind of seen as just a little bit more mainstream. There were even some earlier decades, some doctors who said it was good for you, like, and they was, prescribing it as a part of a health routine, to kind of clear your mind and clear your lungs and stuff like that. And it's just crazy, right? How mindsets and science shifts, and how, but it took a while, right? Like, even after the original Surgeon General advisory and warnings came out, I think in the late 60s, about smoking, people still, like, that didn't, like adoption didn't really happen, and public perception didn't necessarily change and policies, even in laws, like for example, like, airport smoking rooms or whatever, like didn't actually start happening for decades, right? So I think there's a lot of research on the importance of social connection for our health, and both our physical and our mental health. But I think it's going to take a little bit more time to have that public perception change. And like 2 years ago, I guess almost 3 years ago now, there was a similar, level of Surgeon General advisory, that was published about the health effects of social connection and social isolation. And, on the same level of smoking, right? In terms of its effect. But I don't know how long it might take for the public perception to change. Even doctors, our research shows that even healthcare providers underestimate it. So.
Yeah, I think I'm not surprised that it takes a while for change to kick in for any sort of population. There's always the change management as a whole other field of study, and how one person can go, oh yeah, that makes sense to me, but then actually when they're trying to changing a group's behavior, it takes a lot of time and effort. And it also, I think when you're comparing it to smoking, it made me think of how when it comes to health versus like physical health versus mental health, physical health often has easily, like, you can see the problem, you can feel like it's a lot easier to look at it and identify it and quantify it, whereas mental health and emotional health is a lot more nebulous and harder for people to understand, because there's not as easy a visual cue,
Right.
Visual signs of it. And so when it comes to understanding human connection in general and the importance of it and how it actually impacts health, I can see that making it even more difficult for people to understand the importance of it. But I think it does seem like it's definitely more of a, like, especially like looking at younger generations when it comes to like work, like how they see work and what the sort of lives they want to lead. Their overall mindset is very different from between even like millennials and Gen Z.
Yeah.
The Gen Z has very much more of a focus on, I just want to be happy, and like that's more priority than I want to be successful and wealthy and have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is like the previous generation's mindset. From like millennials and back, has always kind of had that, like, be as successful as possible, accumulate as much stuff and as much wealth, and the way they describe success is very different. And so I think there's that, like, a generational shift that's already happened. I think is also going to help accelerate this in this regard, because as more Gen Z into the workforce, that mindset in offices and stuff is going to be changing as well as they're entering more and more.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how that shifts, as there is that generational shift in leadership and management, right? And I hope that it does bring with that a positive trend, right? When I've presented about the importance of friendship at work, we always talk about how there's so many different metrics in terms of KPIs and performance and retention and all these things that improve in the workplace when things like psychological safety are established. Things like feeling like you have a best friend at work. There was a Gallup study that found, and it continues to find every year, it asks the same question, that one of the top, if not the number one predictor of whether or not somebody's going to stay in that same job at the same company the next year is, do you have a best friend at work?
Yeah, I think it leads as a big factor of how much the person feels like they belong there, like they have some sort of connection besides the job title and all the other kind of parameters with their position and what the company's doing and stuff. I can see how there's definitely, and it ties in really well to what I've heard other guests talk about when it comes to workplace culture and happiness, and how the KPIs that businesses are always focusing on and supposedly prioritizing are all boosted significantly when employees are happier and have that sense of like belonging and connection and safety, and
Yeah.
have like and two-way communication, and just all these things that are very human needs that
Yes.
companies have basically not prioritized enough and tried to cut corners around, or have not provided, and then still wonder why the metrics and all the KPIs aren't showing up like they used to, or aren't showing up as much as they'd like. And that there's this, and it's not like, and it's kind of baffling for me, is that it's not a new thing. It's not some new innovation. It's just coming back to understanding that you need to treat people like people, and provide for them and support them, and you'll get what you need when you help other people get what they need.
Yeah.
And even if it's something as fundamental as building that sense of belonging and psychological safety at work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's important. I think it's critical. And I think, listeners may just be able to recognize, times in their life when they've been in a work situation where there was not psychological safety, or there was hopefully not, but toxic situation that was just difficult, and right. And all you can think about is, man, I want a new job, or right. It's just hard to focus. And so productivity just goes down the drain. And, if you take that away, if you reverse that, if you make that into a psychologically safe situation where you feel like you belong, where you feel like you can, have a voice, have ideas matter, that can really help you feel connected to other people, and also help productivity just really skyrocket.
Yeah, there's that whole quiet quitting phenomenon that's going on a lot right now, where people are they're showing up there doing the bare minimum, but they're not putting in any more than they absolutely have to, because there's not the motivation doing it, and they're more concerned about getting noticed for anything. They're kind of trying to stay under the radar and be invisible, and not make any waves, and not do anything like innovative or exciting, or anything like because they don't want to be. They don't have that motivation, don't have that connection. So for companies that are dealing with these sort of issues, or realizing that they have areas to improve, or room to improve in this area, what do you recommend that leadership does to solve some of these issues?
I think for starters, being aware of, what is psychological safety, maybe educate yourselves a little bit about that. And, see how you stand up, how your teams stand up against that. Do some assessment, like basic assessments of do teams feel anonymously safe on their teams, within their teams, and who's not feeling safe, and why. I think those are good. I think also prioritizing the human factors that don't necessarily feel like they matter, right? It's okay, the bottom line matters, and the making sure that we're profitable, and making sure that everything's looking good, and that people are performing. Obviously those are really important things for a business to work, but also those human factors will help to make sure that the employees are excited, that or even if they're not excited, they feel safe. They go into work and they feel safe. It's a safe place to be, right? That's like ground zero right there. And then little things, this is just something, kind of a post-COVID type of advice, I guess, is depending on your company, and I guess the nature of your work, a lot of, kind of computer technology type of workers are either remote or at least hybrid. And so one quick tip that could be helpful for you is, coordinate on your hybrid day or your hybrid days, right? Which days are you in the office together, right? Make sure you are in the same days, so that you can have that time together. There's a lot of good research on, the benefits that come from just simply being around other people. There's a lot of social isolation and loneliness that happens just because you're sitting in your own room. I mean, it's convenient. It's nice. You can just stay in, the bottom half of your pajamas or whatever all day if you want to. And it really is nice some days, right, to have that. And I think hybrid is great for that. But there's psychological and even physiological benefit from simply being around other people, other humans who have a pulse, right? Who aren't just, on a screen. So, yeah.
I think one of the things that even can build on top of that, make it even more effective for building that sense of belonging and building those kind of best friends at work thing that we mentioned earlier, is having, when you have a hybrid or remote workforce, even in an office, but having more activities with people that you work with that are not work related. So if you have like if you have a remote team or a hybrid team, having activities where everyone's coming together and doing like a volunteer thing, or just doing some like barbecue, but like an event where people can get around and socialize and are not talking about necessarily work all the time.
Right.
But it's all like doing some sort of like retreats or other like events that bring people together and get people to do activities that are fun and not work related.
Yeah.
With people that are at work, and just help them start some of those conversations that are personal and really get to know people on a more human level, more holistic level, really helps amplify the work relationship side of things. Because if there's a stressful deadline, or someone needs something from another employee, before they jump to a conclusion or they make an assumption about the other person, that exacerbates the situation. Like, oh, I remember, yeah, they said there's like their kid was sick recently, so maybe they're just kind of dealing with that and they're a little bit behind. So I'll give them some patience and grace on that, because I understand more about who they are and what their life is like outside of the office, and how the life outside the office affects what happens in the office. So there's a lot of these communication and relationship and interaction padding and buffers that allow for better productivity and better team performance.
Yeah.
When people know about each other beyond the job title and where they are in the pecking order.
Yeah, I think it takes more effort. I think it takes more energy. And so my dissertation research actually looked at, we put people together in person to have a conversation, kind of like you're saying, to figure out these to learn more about each other, right? Like to understand more about the other person that they're talking to. And they asked these questions about each other's lives and kind of got to know each other for about 20 minutes. And we had them hooked up to ECG monitors to track their level of stress, right? Their heart rate variability. And we found that it stresses people out, to talk to each other, to get together and have these conversations, to be able to get to know somebody else. But after they had that somewhat, stressful or, physiologically arousing kind of conversation, they felt less lonely. They felt more connected. They felt more in sync with the other person. And so, I think there's effort that that's required. There's, whether it's, you can call it stress or effort, right? To get together in person and to talk with somebody. Like, it takes a little bit of guts, right? Like it can, I mean, it's funny, but like post COVID, I think, talking to somebody, having a conversation with somebody, especially somebody you don't know, is like a skill set that you have to kind of practice, right? And that's doesn't necessarily come easy and can be stressful, but after you do it, you feel less lonely, you feel better about, you don't feel as isolated, right? And so I think in the workplace setting that we're talking about, I think it's just as important to do that type of thing, even if it feels stressful or, kind of feels like scary. Those things can really help you get to know and feel closer to your teammates.
Awesome. Totally agree. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Andy. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a comment, and subscribe. If you want to check out either more information about myself or Andy, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.